But from what it appears is that hydrogen does act as an anti-inflammatory. And I think most of us know that with inflammation typically comes disease. So inflammation is kind of like this first wave. And so that's a really important thing. It also acts as a selective antioxidant. Now, this is really important because what I learned through all my research is that all antioxidants are not created equal. The first thing that's important to understand with antioxidants is that they come in different sizes.
Welcome to Thriving with Diabetes, the podcast where we empower people with type 2 diabetes. I am your host, Gamden, a holistic wellness coach helping people overcome challenges related to type 2 diabetes. As a holistic wellness coach, I have dedicated my passion for health and wellness to helping people like you navigate the complexities of diabetes. I believe that with the correct knowledge, support, and mindset, you can lead a healthier and more fulfilling life while managing your health condition. In this episode of Thriving with Diabetes podcast, we are talking about hydrogen therapy, where science and innovation intersect for a better life. Our guest today is a molecular hydrogen therapy researcher, Mr. Greg. During this episode, we will take a deep dive into molecular hydrogen therapy and explore its impact on overall health. I'm so excited to have our guest with me today, Greg, the Hydrogen Man. As you know, our podcast is about empowering people with type 2 diabetes to lead healthier and more fulfilling lives. And having experts like Greg on our show helps us achieve that goal. It is always inspiring to learn about our guests' unique perspectives and experiences. Before we dive into our discussion, I would love for Greg to introduce himself, share some background about him and what he does. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Greg. Greg, welcome to the Thriving with Diabetes podcast.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's obviously a pleasure to hang out with you and speak with you, Gamden.
Brilliant. Greg, in one of your videos, you have mentioned your personal health journey and transformation. Can you share with our audience what led you to your mission and how hydrogen therapy became a key part of your story?
Well, it all started with me basically getting extremely sick, which ended up what I would say ruining my life. Unfortunately, when you're so ill to the point where, I couldn't walk, I was in a ton of pain, and I was having some little issues with like, liver, kidneys, stuff like this. Nothing hugely crazy as far as I could tell, but my main issues were inflammation all over the body. So I literally couldn't even lift up a remote control to change the channel on the television. It hurt so bad. And I had a heart condition, which was pretty bad. I was told that I needed open heart surgery. Had a lot of gut issues and like autoimmune type of issues, which were believed to be causing a lot of the inflammation. And then on top of it all, I had some tumors in my body. And so the whole thing was really kind of a mess. And I was not getting the kind of help that I really needed from the medical establishment, unfortunately. And so, I did work in the medical field for like 2 decades. And I knew kind of how things worked behind the scenes. And I just kind of knew that they weren't going to be able to help me. And that was true. They were not able to help me much. They typically just want to put me on, painkillers, which actually weren't working for my condition. And then they also wanted, to put me on things like anti-inflammatories and stuff, which actually weren't helping much either. There was something catastrophic going on in my body. My body was definitely going downhill very quickly. And then I started doing research because I knew I had to find my own way. But I'm a big believer in, I tend to follow data and I tend to follow a lot of the science rather than people's opinions. Because when I see a lot of people's opinions online, people are disagreeing all the time, people don't agree on everything. And I really needed to see something more concrete and so I could follow the data and try to help my body really get back to where I knew it could be.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your story.
So
Uh, we need to dig a little bit about hydrogen, and you know that for those in our audience who may not be familiar with molecular hydrogen, so let's start with the basics. Can you explain what molecular hydrogen is at a molecular level and where it can be found naturally?
So I guess what I'll just say to keep it really simple, molecular hydrogen is a gas, kind of like oxygen is also a gas. And now oxygen is obviously medically approved. They use medical grade oxygen. And I always like to distinguish the difference between medical grade and something that's not medical grade. This is really important as we go into the conversation deeper. But that's what molecular hydrogen is. Now, the reason that I discovered it was for a few reasons. I mean, one of the reasons was because I was reading as much medical information as I could that could potentially help my health. And I stumbled upon a lot of scientific studies coming out of Japan in regards to molecular hydrogen. And it just seemed too good to be true. And usually when something is too good to be true, it just isn't true. And so I was very hesitant. I read the data for years. I didn't even try it right away. And then I found something interesting. I found that I also like to observe nature a great deal. And I found that in nature, there's a place called Lourdes, France. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it,
No,
Camden.
no.
You never have? So a lot of people go to this place because they call it the healing waters of Lourdes. And people would literally drink this water and they were claiming to, have miracles and things of that nature. And so what ended up happening was I learned later on that the Japanese discovered that there was molecular hydrogen in that water that was coming from this place called Lourdes, France, which is like a very spiritual place. And people fly from all around the world to get that water. Then the Japanese started doing a lot of studies on the hydrogen, first starting with mice, and it was just so unbelievable. And I became so desperate because the level of pain I was in and the inability to walk is a very depressing thing. I mean, this completely depressed me. I was in so much pain. I felt like I had no hope. And I was trying to do everything that I could. And so that was one of the things that I began to, and I tried so many things, by the way. I tried a lot of different pieces of equipment, healers, doctors, the naturopaths. I mean, so many different people and techniques and cleansings and different things. Some of them were great, but nothing was really fixing the issue. And that was kind of the big problem. And what really ended up making a huge shift in my health was hydrogen, this molecular hydrogen, which it was so amazing. It was literally hard to believe. I mean, truly hard to believe. However, we don't just have like 50 studies or two studies, like a lot of, things that you see out there, not even 100 or 200. I believe the number is well over 2,000 studies at this point. And it is something that is medically approved in places like Japan, though in America, they just don't know about it a lot. But I think it's just such a big game changer. And it became important to me because this is a little personal. It's kind of weird, but when I was at really one of my low points, I was sitting by myself on a couch because I couldn't get up. And I was trying to watch TV, and that's when I tried to lift up that remote, and I just couldn't even use the remote. My joints hurt so bad. And I just started crying, because I'm like, I can't live like this. And I really wanted some type of change. And I remember making a prayer about it. Just, when we're at a low point, I think that's what we do sometimes. And I was just praying for some type of guidance or help. And I made this kind of little promise to myself that if I ever found my way out of this mess that I was in, that I would share it with others. And that's like one of the reasons that I do my YouTube channel. It's one of the reasons I'm here And I just feel that so many people out there are suffering from, unfortunately, health issues, and they don't know what to do or how to possibly get back on their feet or overcome these obstacles that are in their lives.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. I was doing some research about hydrogen therapy or treatment and found that it can be used to reduce oxidative stress and inflammation, which might sound like a novel concept to many of us. Can you share the scientific principles that underlie hydrogen therapy and how it interacts with our cells and tissues?
So it can get a little complex because the truth is, and this goes for a lot of even pharmaceutical medicines, they don't know the full on mechanism of how exactly hydrogen is working. First, it started when they were doing these scientific studies. They could clearly see that it was doing something, like people who had arthritis or people who had inflammation, like you were saying. So we know that hydrogen, or it appears that hydrogen. I should say I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm not making any medical claims. I always tell people do your own research. But from what it appears is that hydrogen does act as an anti-inflammatory. And I think most of us know that with inflammation typically comes disease. So inflammation is kind of like this first wave. And so that's a really important thing. It also acts as a selective antioxidant. Now, this is really important because what I learned through all my research is that all antioxidants are not created equal. The first thing that's important to understand with antioxidants is that they come in different sizes. And I don't know if you can pull up a chart maybe for the audience, but if you can't, there's like a chart that shows the size of vitamin E, for example. It shows the size of vitamin C, CoQ10, glutathione, these type of antioxidants. And when they would have these sizes of the molecule versus hydrogen, hydrogen was so much tinier. And this is where it became interesting because now we have this selective antioxidant that's super tiny. And the fact that it's super tiny means it can get literally anywhere in your body. And it appears to be obviously totally safe, kind of like oxygen. And so it goes right past the blood-brain barrier. It can get even into the core of the mitochondria. So I've worked with a lot of people. I mean, I've worked with people with all sorts of conditions from CFS, things like chronic fatigue syndrome, people with Crohn's disease, a lot of different gut issues. Hydrogen appears to be amazing for the gut. I mean, just literally mind-blowing, literally hard to believe what I've seen when it comes to gut issues, IBS, so many people with gut issues. And when you realize that almost 80% of our immune system is in our gut, you realize how important the gut is to your health. And the Japanese are continuing to make really, really interesting and big discoveries in regards to, the gut and quote unquote, how it affects our health. And so on it goes. Basically, hydrogen, it's really difficult for them to know exactly how it's working. I mean, it does appear to even affect certain signaling pathways like the NRF2 pathway. It does they found it to do all these little things, but they really aren't sure of the whole way that it works because I've seen personally it do certain things for some people and then not do certain things for other people. Like I remember reading some type of paper where people would have too high of levels of glutathione, and then people who would have too low levels of glutathione, and it appeared to bring people almost like in a homeostasis. It seems to be almost this natural balancer. And then on top of it all, I mean, it just does. Again, if we were to go into the list of things that it does, the list is so long, I don't even think I could remember everything from heart conditions. That's one of the things that it's approved for is heart attacks in Japan, strokes, um, and even one of the interesting ones because obviously you're really into the diabetes and the way that it affects blood glucose, and that is pretty remarkable. The way that it affects the pH of the blood. A lot of people don't know that pH stands for potential hydrogen, and it's really important to regulate the pH of your blood, even for oxygenation, which is kind of an interesting thing because we're already breathing in oxygen right now, roughly 20% or so. And so when people don't have proper oxygen levels, like oxygen saturation in the blood, obviously it's a problem. And it's usually something going on in the body, not because we're not getting enough oxygen, I knew a guy who was smoking, I believe he said 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day for over 50 years. And his lungs were completely, I mean, he didn't have proper oxygenation of his blood. It was a total mess. And he got on hydrogen, and that helped him significantly. And it was so crazy that something that you would think wouldn't help with oxygen levels really did help this guy with oxygenation of his blood. So there is so much that hydrogen does. It's a little difficult to explain, but it does appear to even come from nature. A place like Lourdes, France, but there's other places. I believe there's a place in Mexico called Tlacote, Mexico. There's a place in Germany, and I believe there was a recent discovery, and some that haven't even been said yet that I personally think that I know of, which I will be releasing more in the future. But they're finding these places on planet Earth where actually it appears to be done naturally, literally by planet Earth, and so I do observe nature a lot to get my inspiration to look for answers, and it's been a really good guide. And it did the same thing with hydrogen. It was a great guide for me.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing these great insights and thoughts about the potential health benefits of hydrogen therapy. Um, Always, when I check your videos, I see that you emphasize water, using water as, or it has to be, when you use water, you mentioned that it has to be clean and pure. So, and I think water is used as a carrier for hydrogen therapy, specifically in this case. Can you explain why clean water or pure water is essential for effective hydrogen therapy?
So this is my own personal opinion. When I went through my healing process, obviously I learned a lot about chemicals. So, the chemicals they spray on food, the different things. That's why I really became big on organic stuff, because I saw the studies. I saw the lab tests of how these things were also affecting our body. I mean, we know like things like glyphosate are not good for us. And so I kind of took this path of purity in order to try to find my way back to health. And that included not just food, even the air I breathe, but the real foundational part that I discovered is, as you said, water. So, like extremely clean water and extremely clean hydrogen, because clean hydrogen is not easy to make. It's very difficult actually to make super high pure, what I would call medical grade hydrogen. And so with water, I learned every water filtration, every single way of filtering water in existence. And, whether it's a carbon filter, and there's different types of carbon filters, or whether it's reverse osmosis filters. But none of those filters, and this is unfortunate, but none of them remove everything. There's always things that are left in the water, especially as I learned throughout time, whether it's bacteria, viruses, parasites, no water filter removes all of this. And some of it even makes it worse, because some filters will get dirty and then bacteria starts building up on them. And so what I discovered was something called carbon distillation. And the good news is that it's not that expensive. And this form of water filtration eliminates absolutely everything. And so we're talking all viruses, all bacteria, and all fluoride, all pesticides. I mean, it just removes everything. I have the lab report somewhere, actually, if you wanted me to grab it. And so that's something that became very important for me. And I realized that, in my personal opinion, the foundation to health is absolutely clean water and hydrogen. And if I just got those things, the things that I've seen, as far as not just in myself, but in other people who I personally have known, even my own father, it was absolutely amazing, what I've seen. And I mean, I've seen people with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, type 2. I have an interesting story about a type 1. I've seen glaucoma, obviously even my own heart condition, and somebody else who had the same heart condition. People with macular degeneration, I've had some really amazing results in regards to that, which doctors are saying is completely untreatable pretty much, or there's no cure for it, for example. And I'm not claiming any cure or anything, but I have had testimonials. So people will write me, and there's one guy who had it really bad, and his doctor is always monitoring him, his eye doctor. And I've seen results in all those things. And I've seen a lot of those just literally disappear, like go away. And that was really hard to believe. And that's when I really became a, as I saw it do more and more for others, even though I saw a lot of what it did for me, but a lot of other people had conditions that I didn't have, and seeing those conditions go away blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something very big, and the world definitely needs to know. And touching on diabetes, there was a girl, she now calls herself the hydrogen girl, because she was watching my channel. She had type 1 diabetes, and she was able to get off insulin. If you can believe this, she was able to get off insulin for something like, I think it was 4 to 6 months with no insulin. For a type 1 diabetic, that should not be possible. And her doctor, who has been following her case, I think for like 20 or 30 years, a very long time, when he saw what was happening, he literally told her, he's like, this is impossible. Like, this can't be done. You're showing me. He said, I want you to track everything. He wanted to know every little thing she was eating. He wanted to know everything. He tracked her for, I believe, 4.5 months. And once he saw the results, he just said, you know what? This is literally impossible, but I see that you're doing it. I would like to know, how are you doing this? He actually asked her, how are you accomplishing this? And she said, well, there's this guy on YouTube. He calls himself the Hydrogen Man. He was like, what? He didn't even believe her. He's like, that can't be possible. He said, this is something that would be literally worthy of a Nobel Prize. He said, this is huge. And I'm thinking to myself, this is, the Japanese discovered this for years now. I've been using hydrogen for years. It's absolutely transformed, the way that I'm living these days, and not just me, but all the people who've been watching the channel. It's out there for free. Everybody can watch it. And there's just so much to learn about hydrogen. But I try to share and educate on it because a lot of the subjects that I talk about, other people don't talk about in the world of hydrogen, whether it's proper protocols, how to use it correctly, how to make it correctly, and how to really try to follow the science. Because unfortunately, I've tried other ways that didn't really follow the science, and I did make myself sick. And it's really, and others have also. I've had numerous emails where people have unfortunately been harmed by using hydrogen that requires chemicals, for example. Like, people will use lye or sodium hydroxide to make hydrogen. In my opinion, it's not a good idea. You want to make it properly so that, and if you make it properly, hydrogen is extremely safe. We've known that for a long time. I mean, it's extremely pure gas if made correctly.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing this information. Uh, Before we move to the to how to get started, there's another section or part of this episode I want to get into, but I want to mention something about using a hydrogen or as a supplement. Do you have any idea about that?
I mean, I do. I know all the different ways of making hydrogen, using hydrogen. What's, in my opinion, a good idea, what's a waste of either time or maybe even, potentially dangerous. So yeah, I know all the different ways. There's a reason that they call me the hydrogen man online, is because I know all this.
Okay, thanks a lot. You know that our podcast is about thriving with diabetes. I want you to talk about hydrogen therapy for diabetes. Can you share some insights into how hydrogen therapy may influence blood sugar regulation and tackle type 2 diabetes complications?
Yeah, so what I've seen, it's very interesting. I've seen that certain amounts of hydrogen act like certain amounts of insulin. Now, this is what I've personally seen. Again, I'm not making a medical claim or giving anybody medical advice, but that's what I've seen. The lady who was the hydrogen girl, she was realizing that when she would use a certain amount of the water, the hydrogen water, and of course, I like the water to be at what I would call therapeutic levels of hydrogen and made correctly, and then it acted like she was like she was using so much insulin. That's why she was able to either reduce her insulin depending on how she was living her lifestyle, or sometimes completely being able to go without it. And so the two real good ways of using hydrogen, in my personal opinion, the best way from a lot of experiences, one is the water. So what you're doing is you're dissolving the hydrogen gas in the water, kind of like soda pop has CO2 in it. And so you can dissolve these gases in liquid. And so you dissolve the hydrogen water and you drink it, just kind of the way that it is in nature. Now you can even, the device that I like to use, it's a Japanese device. Most devices are made in China. I don't really like, I hate to say this, but they haven't really been very good devices as far as I can see. They don't have the proper technology. And you can also inhale the hydrogen gas. And so you can do that too. I've discovered through a lot of years that the combination is what's best. And this company, the one that makes these hydrogen pieces of equipment from Japan, they are literally the number one hydrogen machine in Japan. And the Japanese are the ones who discovered this, master of electronics. You need a certain type of metal technology. The Japanese are actually brilliant when it comes to metals, metallurgy. People would know that from like samurai swords. I mean, just absolute, amazing pieces of technology, really. And so using the water and the gas is what I've discovered. And I have protocols. It can be a little different for people depending on whether they're taking high blood pressure medication, if they have any kidney problems. So there's different ways, that I would personally use the hydrogen. But I think I have a video. My videos are numbered. I believe it's video 337 that kind of talks more about the details about how to go about using the water. For example, I like to drink it on empty stomach so I get the most out of it. And that's a protocol that I developed quite a while ago. A lot of my protocols have been actually studied and proven that they were the best way to use the hydrogen. So I like drinking the water first, and then if you really want to enhance it, then you inhale the gas second. But the water is always foundational. Hydration and hydrogen, in my opinion, are foundational to good health, and that includes for diabetes. But that goes for a lot of things. And there's a reason that they like to put the IV in you when you go to the hospital and try to get you hydrated right away. There's even certain medicines that just don't even work that well unless you are hydrated. And so hydration is super important. And hydrogen actually appears to hydrate you even better. They've even used it for athletes.
Uh-huh.
And they've done some studies in Japan in regards to athletics and hydrogen. It's pretty amazing.
So you can benefit from it even for performance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You should see the way that it moves the blood. It's so hard to believe. I had a doctor one time. I've had a lot of doctors reach out to me. I've educated a lot of physicians on how to use hydrogen depending on, the patients. And one of them saw one of my videos where I show live blood analysis, where it shows what happens to the blood when you drink normal water, when you drink hydrogen water, or when you're not drinking water. And when they showed the hydrogen water and what it was doing to the blood, I remember this doctor contacting me and she said, you know what? That is not possible. She said, that's impossible what you're showing there. And she thought that I was showing something and being dishonest with the audience. And so she wanted to prove that I was wrong. And so she actually bought the same exact piece of equipment that they use in the lab test. She did the exact same test. She even wanted me to find out all the parameters of the test. She followed everything. And by the time she was done, I remember when she called me, she said, I can't believe it. It's real. She said, it literally is doing exactly what your video is showing. And it's absolutely remarkable. I mean, I think it's like a miracle. I really think it's like a miracle. And that's what's so funny about that place in Lourdes, France, is that that's supposed to be like some miraculous, holy place, and hydrogen is so miraculous. Like I said, they don't know everything about it, but we know a lot of things about hydrogen. I mean, the sun, ironically, the sun is made of almost entirely hydrogen. Obviously, we know water is partially made of hydrogen, which actually brings up a really good question. A lot of people always say, well, if water already has hydrogen, why do I need to, use this type of technology? And I think it's actually really simple, is because hydrogen is bonded to oxygen, H2O. So they're bonded together, so you can't really utilize that hydrogen because it's not in a gas form. It's bonded to. So what we're actually doing is dissolving just the gas alone without the oxygen. So it's just the pure hydrogen gas. And that's really what you're getting, and really appears to be making these amazing differences. And I mean, I've even seen it used for, this was pretty amazing. There's a magazine that's doing a story on it, by the way. I worked with a lady who had TBI, traumatic brain injury, and I've also worked with people who've had issues with like Alzheimer's and dementia. And I mean, this is a really big deal because they don't really have treatment for such things. And with the hydrogen in some of my protocols, the results were unbelievable. Like on my channel, I also have before and after pictures. The official company also has their own YouTube channel, and they've interviewed some of these people. It's so unbelievable, Gamden, that it's. I mean, yes, it's amazing for diabetes, in my opinion, from everything I've seen, but it's amazing for so many things, and that's why I just, you know what? That's why I just say it's for health. Clean water's for everybody. I mean, honestly, oxygen is for everybody, and hydrogen is for everybody. Now, again, oxygen, we already get it, so it's already in our environment, but we're not really breathing in, you know, hydrogen right now. It's like 0.000. I mean, it's barely any hydrogen in our environment, and our bodies seem to really starve for it and crave it. And again, I just think it's such a I think it's a beautiful miracle, and I appreciate you sharing it with everybody because I think the world needs to know. I really do. And too many doctors do not know about it, and I think it's too important for them not to.
Brilliant. Very interesting information. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, if someone wants to explore uh, hydrogen therapy but is unsure how to get started, what practical tips or steps can you offer for those who want to try the therapy?
Yeah, so the important part is this. This is what I've discovered through my research. One, the equipment that you use to make the hydrogen is crucially important. I mean, absolutely important. I know every single machine out there. I mean, I've been researching this for over a decade. And so the piece of equipment is that's like absolutely extremely important. So that's the first thing. Because a lot of people try to go cheap. Whether they're trying to get these hydrogen pills out there that create a chemical reaction that I personally would never use for many reasons. Whether it's devices out there like I was telling you that use chemicals, you know, and even some cheap Chinese products. And people need to understand that doing it correctly means there's a huge difference and even potential, safety concerns. So that's the first thing. Now, the device that I personally use myself is from a company called holyhydrogen.com. That's the name of the website. That's the best there is. As far as, I mean, I've done all the research, and these guys are not only number one in Japan, but everybody pretty much knows that they're the best. And so that's the first thing is you want the proper equipment. Now, in my personal opinion, also, you want super clean water. You might already have a carbon filter and you're like, hey, I'm happy with that. You may have a reverse osmosis filter. You may be happy with that. And you can use that water in the machine. It's fine. But I like to go, I'm pretty crazy these days, right? I want the cleanest food. I want the cleanest water. I want the cleanest hydrogen. And so as far as the cleanest water, there is a website the equipment that I use is from a website called mypurewater.com. And the discount codes, if people want them, is called Uprising144K because that's the name of my YouTube channel. And if people don't want to use a discount code, it's fine. But if they want to take advantage of it, great. The important part is that you're getting, in my opinion, the super clean water and then the hydrogen. And then I like to use it empty stomach, before breakfast, same thing before lunch, same thing before dinner. So I'm properly hydrated throughout the day. And I'm always getting this hydrogen in me. If I want to take it to the next level, which I do often, is I'll inhale the hydrogen literally while I'm eating. So when I'm eating my dinners or I'm going to be making, breakfast, pretty soon, excuse me, and I'll be most likely inhaling the hydrogen while I'm consuming my morning breakfast. So those are some of the easiest ways to go about it. But I have seen people, and I never like saying this, Gamden, and I feel like I shouldn't, but I think it's important though. I've known people personally who had really bad diets, right? They're not taking care of themselves. And I remember one in specifically, I won't name any names, but I remember this person was like, look, I don't want to change my lifestyle. I don't want to change the way I eat. I don't want to change anything, but I do want the health, better health. And this is what they did. All they did was change the type of water. So they got clean water and the hydrogen, and that's it. Everything else in their life, they did not change. The results that I saw were literally hard to believe, Gamden, because I wasn't sure if it was going to work only with hydrogen and having not a very healthy lifestyle. And I still saw things from diabetes go away, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, glaucoma, arthritis. But in my personal opinion, it took a while. I mean, some of these issues took 6 to 8 months to resolve. One of them took 3 years. So if you can imagine that, using hydrogen year after year, not knowing if it's really going to get rid of a condition, 3 years later, the glaucoma was gone, going to a doctor and having them checked for the glaucoma. So, I personally do change things in my life as far as my food and whatnot. And I did that before the hydrogen, and I wasn't getting really better. I hate to say that, but I wasn't. It was good for my body, but it wasn't really clearing up my conditions. I've discovered that combining the healthy lifestyle with the clean water and hydrogen was the biggest thing that I could do, and it was transformative. And I only hope that other people out there who are suffering. There was a guy I remember who had diabetes for, it was such a long time. He actually had it was destroying his nerves. He was getting neuropathy, a lot of pain. It took longer for him to get the results because he had had diabetes for so long, and he didn't even know. So he was living with it, not controlling it. And that's why it got so bad. And I can't remember how many decades, I mean, decades of this. And so when he got on the hydrogen and the proper protocol, it took it took over a year. I think it took like a year and 2 months. And his neuropathy was pretty much gone, or it was like 80, 90% better, which was better than he said his doctor was ever able to do. He had a doctor that was a specialist for his neuropathy, and he was not getting the type of results that we were getting with some lifestyle changes. And that's why it's so amazing. I mean, it really came down to the fact that I was just grateful. I was super grateful that the Japanese discovered it, and super grateful that they created this piece of equipment, that I now use, because most of the equipment out there I would never use. And, I don't even know if you know the story of the guy who created the equipment, but the story is fascinating, beautiful. And I just love that he put his whole heart into it, kind of like people out there like Elon Musk, doing the electric cars. He puts his whole heart into it, and he created that cool new Cybertruck, and that's super cool. And this other guy that did the hydrogen machine, he basically did something similar but with hydrogen. And I was just obviously very thankful that this exists and that we have access to it. It's not just, originally they were only going to sell them in Japan. And when I was looking for the equipment, I couldn't get it in the US. And now you can get it in the US, thank goodness, and in many other places around the world now. So
Brilliant.
it's been a blessing.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing this information. Just one more question regarding this how to get started. Are there any safety precautions for someone new to hydrogen therapy?
Yeah, so the first thing that I'll say is obviously always consult your physicians, though I'm not sure how much they're going to know about hydrogen, but the first thing is that the equipment is safe, because not only about how you're making it, some equipment is actually flammable and explosive. So when the Japanese made this particular piece of equipment, they made the percentage of hydrogen literally a specific percentage so that it's not flammable. So you can't even light it on fire. So there's no issues there. Nothing's going to happen. There's no safety issue. So that's really great. Uh, so for this piece of equipment, the only other concern that I would have for people, and it's a very small concern, but I always share with people, is if you have high blood pressure, or if you're on high blood pressure medication, you really have to monitor your blood pressure once you get on the hydrogen, because what I've seen is the hydrogen starts helping lower your blood pressure because it begins to go after, in my opinion, solving the problem that's causing this issue in the first place. And you're taking medicine to push it down even more. So people will end up having too low a blood pressure. So they have to then speak with their physician, their doctors, and they have to start adjusting the levels of medication. So eventually, I've seen people either get off of it or significantly lower the amount of the medicine that they're using. That would be one thing to watch out for. The only other thing that I would watch out for is also if you're diabetic. This is actually important too, because if you're taking so much insulin, for example, or you're taking some type of medication to control your blood glucose, and you start using hydrogen, and hydrogen starts again solving the issue within the body and going back to where you should be, well, that medicine may be bringing your blood glucose too low. So you really want to monitor your blood glucose, and you're going to have to play this little, game of slowly getting off the medicine and being able to monitor your blood glucose. But that's also going to be depending on how you're using the hydrogen. Make sure that you're using it properly and that you're getting enough of it a day in order for it to be therapeutic. Because if you have one day a lot of hydrogen and one day a little hydrogen, it's going to affect things a little bit. And probably the other last one would be just kidneys, because if you have certain kidney problems, obviously you can only consume so much water sometimes depending on the issue. And that's actually another interesting one because, doctors tell you that, kidney disease is irreversible and that you can't fix it. That's what the medical establishment tells you. Well, I can tell you, my own brother had kidney problems. I remember when he called me and he's like, "Brother, I'm about to get on dialysis. Like my kidneys they're done." And I was so shocked because I didn't know. And this was the first time I heard of it when he called me. And he's like, "Do you think we can fix this?" I immediately put him on my protocol, my program. And yes, we did bring his kidneys back to, a way healthier state. And he didn't have to go on dialysis. He's still not on dialysis. And so, you know, all these things, in my opinion, are extremely important, but the world needs to know about this one. I'm still surprised. I'm still surprised that they don't. I'm still surprised all the doctors don't know. I can't believe it's not all over the place on the internet. I mean, it's just hard to believe that this is not getting spoken of more.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for sharing that as well. I have got another question before we finish this episode. What inspiring message or advice would you like to leave with our viewers and listeners, specifically those struggling with type 2 diabetes?
Well, with type 2 diabetes, in my personal opinion, I think it's actually easily fixable. Dare I say that? That's my own personal opinion. So I would tell people, have hope. I do believe that there is hope for people out there. And I think that a lot of people don't understand not only clean water, people don't understand what's in our water. Water is it's darn right scary what's in our water. I mean, downright scary. And we've heard of towns getting, very, very sick from their water. There's a whole town in China right now that everybody in there is getting cancer and they couldn't figure out why. It came down to their water, and it's stuff that's in the water. So that's why I really encourage super clean water. And then you bring the magic ingredient. I mean, to me, the magic ingredient is hydrogen. So I would just say have hope. You know, don't don't get too down on yourself because it can affect us, mentally, spiritually. We can get depressed when we're not doing well. So just know that there's hope, and that luckily we have this wonderful technology that can be accessible to us and to both clean water and make hydrogen. And I would just say, make a commitment and go all in. That's what I told, people in my own family, like my dad, and many people have contacted me. In fact, if people want to contact me, some people are like, "Hey, I want to know protocols," or "I want to talk to you." I do tell people you're welcome to email me. And then, I always say include your name and phone number because I do try to call people or even set up, consults sometimes if they really want to know more. But that's what I would tell people: have hope, don't lose hope. I think that this is exactly the type of technology that can give us hope, and that's the reason that I'm here today with you.
Thank you for sharing your inspiring message. And the next thing is how can people find you if they want to get in touch with you or learn more about you and what you do?
So if they want to contact me, the email is uprising144k@gmail.com. So that's my email if people want to email me. If people want to learn more, they can go to, I have YouTube, Rumble, I think Instagram, and Twitter. However, YouTube is the main place where all the new information comes out. I don't release a lot on the other platforms. I try to, but I don't. So YouTube is the best place. You can watch a lot of videos. I show testimonials. I even show how to set up the machine that I use, how to maintain the machine. Also new technologies or new things that I find, because I'm really big on following the science, but I also make sure that I do my due diligence on research before I share a lot of things. And I discovered that you don't need that much to be super, super healthy. You don't need a million supplements. You don't need a million machines. This is all my opinion. I try to do a lot with a little. So again, people can contact me if they want to learn more or watch the YouTube channel. And there's over 400 videos by now. So there's a lot of stuff that people can learn from there if they wish to.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for our amazing guest, Greg, for generously sharing his expertise, insights, and time with us today. Your contribution has truly elevated this episode, and I deeply appreciate the information you have provided. I want also to thank every one of you, our dedicated viewers and listeners, for being a part of this episode. If you are seeking additional assistance and support on your health journey, I encourage you to book a discovery call with me at wellnessimpact.org. During this call, we can discuss your health condition, explore how I can provide personalized assistance while addressing any issue or questions you may have. If you found this episode insightful and valuable, I invite you to join our community of people committed to thriving with diabetes. To stay up to date for upcoming episodes, in empowering discussions and practical tips, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those who prefer other platforms such as Spotify, you can follow the Thriving with Diabetes podcast. Once again, thank you, Greg, for being our guest today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this impactful journey. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.